Hi, this is Sally Wood for Be Inspired. My little project today, and I say little because it shouldn't take too long, is to let out a skirt waistband. Now you can use the same method to take in a waistband or trousers. It's quite a useful technique to learn. So let's get on with it. I'm going to have to put a little bit extra fabric in. So I'm going to open these up to give me the allowance that I need. I'm going to have to unpick this bottom piece to about there, all the way along. This is also a natural position to change because there's a pocket here, a join on this side, and a join here. One thing I dislike about overlocked seams is there really isn't any extra fabric for me to use. I'm going to take a little while, pull that stitch out and cut it. Now with a bit of luck with that one stitch, sometimes you need a couple of stitches out before you can actually undo these. There, I got it this time. The easiest way to do this is get underneath and pull your stitches out, and then you're not going to be messing with the top fabric on here. I mean, if I've made a little bit of a mess, it's not going to show, but if I make a mess all the way along, it will show. I'm just going to pull these stitches out until I can loosen them on the other side. And here again, once it's loose, I can cut. And the whole process should be a lot easier. Now, as I say, I'm going to take it there and there. So that's quite a bit to be undone, but it'd be worth it in a minute. You could use a seam ripper, but I'm also aware that I have cut into seams when I've used a seam ripper, so I tend to use a thick needle to pull them, and then I'm not cutting anything. If I put there, that's where the thread is across, and I'll just pull them out. And then I'll go the other way too. I try to get the stitches in between. You might not be able to see this. I've got one piece of fabric there, and I save both sides of the fabric of extra threads being pulled if I do it this way, because I'm literally just pulling the threads that had sewn the item together. Just be really careful. It usually takes a little minute to get where you need it to go to. Usually the skirt is actually attached to the waistband here. For whatever reason they didn't do that. I've got that open there, and now I'm going to do the same. At least undo an inch either side to get into. Try to find the easy threads to unpick. I can pull that out of the way like that, and then let's see if I can pull those out from underneath like that. Once that's done, I should be able, no guarantee of course, but I should be able to start like I did before and pull the threads out from underneath. I've only got to be able to get in there, so as I say, about an inch, 2 to 3 centimeters either side of this will be enough for me to do what I need to do. Because this has been sewn over this join, I'm going to have to take that off as well. That'll be an easy fix. I just don't need it there because otherwise I can't undo those side seams. All I'm trying to do is turn this all inside out slightly. You can do it with a smaller opening, but it's better for you if you have a wider area to be able to work with. It seems like a lifetime since I've done an alteration to a waistband. You can do men's trousers this way as well. There's usually a seam up the back, and the trousers are usually attached and the seam goes all the way up the back. You just have to look at things and work out how things are put together. This is a great way of learning how to put things together. Sometimes there's some really good tricks companies use to put clothing together, and it's really quite handy to find them out. After all, mass production is all about saving time. I'll do the same on the other side so that they're both open. Years ago I used to alterations on haute couture garments, and that is one way of really learning how to put clothing together the proper way. Because if you're careful and when you take everything out, you'll know how to put everything back. I used to enjoy that. So that's gone. I'll re-sew that in. I've got the front band, the back band, and now this part is really the nice simple part. The next thing is to actually work down these side seams. You can often get between the two pieces of fabric. Start it off like that if you have to. Just a little nick usually starts it. You just don't want to be going all the way across just in case you cut into the fabric by mistake. I've cut enough that I can do that. And again, I'm just going to pull the seam apart and work on the stitches. And sometimes it takes a little while to really work these stitches out. Because if these people are sensible, they would have done an overstitch at both ends. Sometimes you can pull the the seam apart like that, and you can see where the next stitch is. So in that case you could very easily cut like that across, but if you can't see the stitches, don't risk it. I can see through those stitches. If I pull the two pieces apart, I am free to cut down like this. That's a nice easy one, but this one here, I don't think I'd risk it. Oh, maybe I will. I'll be reckless. Just make sure you can really pull that seam open if you're going to use this method, because you don't want to be cutting into there, otherwise you can't sew it back. You'll have a big gap. Saves time if you can do it this way. So it's really up to you if you want to go stitch by stitch or risk doing it this way. I didn't cut into it. It's nice and clear. And the same on this side and here. I'll do this to the other side of the waistband and then we're ready to sew it together. Having opened all of the seams, just clean them up because you don't want any mess. If I'm doing upholstery stuff, I don't do it this way because I can't stand pulling out yards and yards of threads. But on a small project like this, it's not a problem. Not to me. You've got to understand I do a lot of sewing and I just pick the battles I'm going to win. So on dressmaking, on a little project like this, I don't mind cutting and having threads there. On a larger project, I really get a little bit fed up with it. I'd much rather take the time on some projects to really take those threads out. So I think we're on to a winner here. I think we've got it. That's one side, and now I'll just make sure the other side's just as clean and clear, because as I say, you don't want to have all those fluffy bits poking through. It probably won't show, but just in case. I'm not going to move any of these pleats just yet. I want this in first before I decide what to do. Do this on a 3, and the first thing I'm going to do, and I've done this wrong before, just make sure when you line it up that you're actually lining it up correctly. I've twisted things in the past and it sounds really a strange thing to do, but it's easier than you can imagine sometimes. The other thing is I'm actually going to start from the top down. So I'm going to pull those pieces back like that, pop the top like that underneath the foot, and this takes a little minute to line up sometimes. I'm trying to give this girl as much as I can of extra fabric, which is going to be very difficult because you need to have at least a foot width of seam. So I'm going to pop that down there like that, and then I'm going to come across to here and I'm going to move the needle across to a 6. Hopefully that should give me just under 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm going to line that up like that, forward and back, reverse, and then on down. Keep it as straight as you can to the end, and even at the end do a little reverse if you can. So I've managed to give her about 1 centimetre, and I'm just going to do the same on this side here. And I might not even be able to give her that much because that is really cut close. And again, start at the top and work down. That's the top here, that underneath. And as I say, I'm not going to be able to give her very much because it's right on the end here. The whole idea is to give her as much as I can. And here again, if the waistband was too big, then you use the same process, but instead of me sewing closer to the edge, I would take it in towards the center of the waistband. You can work either way. Put that under there. Oh gosh, it keeps wriggling. It works better if you go top to bottom. That is why I am saying work top to bottom, because the bottom might have been cut slightly differently as they trimmed everything back. And then on forward, and I'm going to just line that up like that so it's as close to the edge as I can go. And then again, just a couple of stitches to hold it. Oh yeah, that's really small. I don't go any closer, so let's have a look. That barely gave her 1/2 inch on this side. Yeah, about 1 centimetre on this side, and it'll be the same on the other. Now the other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to poke this through so I can't forget it. Got to remember to put everything back. I'm going to pop that in along the top here. And I think it was sewn to that side, so I'm going to actually physically sew it to here to hold it, because that needs to go in as well. So I'm going to open that seam, pop that on there like that, and put everything underneath like this. Bring the stitch here to center, and I'm going to just sew over it. Now, if something rucks up, just put a pin on it like that, hold it, and lift the foot slightly. There we go. see if I can get all the way across. Sometimes these just don't want to go back the way they were. I'm not going to go back over it because I might have to take it out, as I was not able to check the seam underneath it. Okay, so the seam's still open, which is the important part. Having attached the loops, I'm just going to fold this over like that. I'm going to line up. It's a bit awkward to see actually, but basically I'm lining up this seam with the seam that's behind it, like that, and I will actually put a pin in like this just to hold it in place. I'm going to open this piece out flat like this and pop it underneath the foot. This is why you have to open everything up so much. You don't want to be risking sewing anything under that doesn't need to be. Now I can see where the top of the fold of the skirt is if I do that, and I'm just going to line both folds up. This one has to be slightly down so that when the skirt waistband is in place it doesn't show over the top. It often takes a little minute to get everything where it needs to be. Now I'm lucky, I have a little red mark on this foot, and that's where I'm going to be following to get all of this in line. The stitch length is on a 3.0. I'm over stitching the original stitches so they don't come undone. Pulling this all into line. I don't want to risk catching that where it doesn't need to be caught, so I'm going to pull that out like that. And as I get there, I'm hoping nothing slipped. I don't think it has. As I get there, I'm just going to pull this pin out. That will just pop into place in its new place. It's still below the fold of the waistband, so it's still going to be hidden. Hopefully that hasn't moved. As you get to the join, just make sure that the seam underneath is still flat, and it's quite bulky. I really should have put that to one side or the other, but too late now. Then I'm going to pull this out like that so it's even. Hopefully all of that will go over the top. Pull that out there so it's not underneath. Make sure that these are level here and just carry on sewing. I should have maybe undone it a little bit further, but as long as I go over these stitches here for about half an inch to an inch, they'll be fine. It's in place. This is still open, that's still open, so that went in quite well. I actually put this one in so you can see how it is. It's not brilliant sewing, but this just moves. It's really not a very good fabric for this, and you'll find sometimes that it only ever goes in once correctly, and that's the first time. But what I wanted to show you was this. I have the inside of the pocket and that much distance to the pleat on the side that I've done, and on this side that's the pocket and there, so you can see that there's already quite a big difference in that area. And the same on the back. So this pleat has opened 1/4 of an inch, pleat on the back has opened 1/4 of an inch, and the same will happen on this side. At the moment the pleat is tight here, but open here. So I'm just going to undo this pleat and the pocket so it goes in properly, and the same undo this pleat. Just one side of the pleat, it doesn't have to be both sides. I'm going to go from the back side here. I'm going to very carefully pull these stitches out and all the way across one side of the pleat, because the pleat will alter slightly, and that's okay. I would use scissors to cut, but I really don't want to ruin the fabric. If I accidentally cut through to the wrong side, then I've got a major problem on my hands. I'll try to avoid anything that's going to rip or tear fabric these days because I can't see as well as I used to. I don't want to ruin people's projects. Now I've done one side, and all I've got to do now is unstitch the pocket and the pleat on this side, and that just takes a little minute because there's quite a few layers. I don't mind at least starting this off with scissors because that's the pocket at the top. So that's almost far enough, I think. Yeah, because there's the inside of the pleat here. As soon as it's got to the outside of the pleat here, I know it's done. It's separated. Cut that back so I'm not messing with stuff I don't need to. I'm going to just see if I can snip those. Only the threads, nothing else. And if I pull those like that, they create a loop, and I'm going to cut the loop, and that should, all these stitches should come out to the inside of that pleat, and then I can make all the adjustments I need to the side of this skirt. I have all of this side from the inside of that pleat to the inside of this pleat open. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start pinning all of this into place so that it can all go back together. I'm going to start where all of this lines up. I'm going to put it this way up for now. Along here, this pleat opens up. I'm just going to make sure that that pleat is stable to start off with. I will check that the pocket is in place, and because I'm going to be going back again shortly, I'm going to just put the pin in that way. That'll be fine for now. Towards the back of the skirt, I'm also going to do the same thing. I'm going to put this pleat here, which it's naturally folded there like that, and you can see that it's pulled this pleat open about 1/4 of an inch. It's a generous 1/4 of an inch actually, and again this pin in to hold it, because what I'm going to do next is to make sure that all of this is in line. You can see that the edge of this is a little bit raised. There's nothing very much I can do about that, so I'm going to pull that down so it's over the side, flip it back over and repin just that little part. I'm going to flip it back over. This seems to be in the right place, so I'm going to pull that down like that, pinch it, turn it over, and then pin that one in place like that. Now I'm going to be turning this one over the other way. I'm going to put this down over the top. The reason being is when the young girl was wearing this skirt the other day, she had this up and it was just flopping over the top because it's so close to the top here. So I'm going to fold that down, pull that like that, and pin that in place. Now that's still in line, so that's good. Again, pull this over. Now here I've got to make sure that not only is this in line like that, but this is also in line. Pull that, and again I'm going to pinch it and turn it over. So holding everything in place under there, I'm just going to pop that down. Now that side of the skirt is all pinned into place. I'm just going to check that everything's where I want it. If I do that, I can see the black from here, which is not good, so I need to really make sure that goes down. But I can do that when I'm sewing it. I can just yank that into place in a minute. If you need to, just rework where you planned to put everything. Then when you've done that, I'm going to do it top because that's the part that's going to show. Pop that into place. I am just going to remove the first pin. That's so that there's movement. The skirt can move. Everything looks flat. I'm just going to sew from about an inch over the stitching where I'd finished forward. Take your time, don't rush this. You could always turn the skirt inside out, by the way. I'm not, but you can do that if you want to. Just make sure that none of the skirt is underneath where you're going to be sewing, otherwise you end up messing that up. And now I'm going to sew towards this pin, which I'm also going to remove. There again, that's so that the skirt has freedom to move into place. I'm going to come to where the seam here and the seam there meet. Moving that pin, adjusting everything underneath. Now there's the tab. I'm going to pull it down just slightly. That should pull the top of this down enough for it not to show. Here again, I'm just going to sew on round. Now when I get to the seam, I'm going to stop. So there's my seam. I'm going to stop, pop the needle down. Adjust everything. It is so important to adjust absolutely everything, because the whole idea is to keep the skirt as steady as you can. I know that there's a pocket under there, and hopefully everything is where it should be, and then carry on sewing. Just a few stitches, remove the last pin, adjust everything. So actually I'm going to pick the foot up so that I can pivot that slightly, pop it down, and again just pull on the skirt waistband, and you do that so that everything underneath goes into place. I'll cut those threads off so I don't sew them in. Just adjusting everything, patting that down so it's in flat. Carry on sewing up to that point. Make sure everything's clear underneath. Over the join and over a few of the stitchings that are on here, and stop. You don't need to go backwards and forwards. It should hold. That wasn't meant to happen. I've got to undo that. For the most part, that's good. So I'm going to just undo this. For whatever reason it walked, and then I'm going to just lay it on top of there and finish off. That sometimes happens. I usually put these tabs underneath here, but seeing as it was done from on top, that's the way I've done it. And then what I do is I put a little knot here so that when it hangs up, it hangs up like that. It's up to them how they do it. Then it doesn't twist the top of the skirt over. Just undone that. I'm going to pop that down there. I'm actually going to pin it along that seam so that it can't pull out. And as I go up, my stitching shouldn't get caught on it. And I've just gone back over and it's held it in place. All that needs to be done is for that to be pressed so that the ridges come out and she has a decent skirt. I'm just hoping that the inch that I've given her is enough. She's a skinny little thing, but the skirt was bought a year ago for prom, and she didn't go to prom last year because of the COVID, so she's wearing what she purchased last year for this year. And of course, we all grow, but I think that would be perfect. I think that's going to be fine. If we look along here at the front, because it's evenly open either side, nobody will know that that's what's happened. It looks like it was meant to be like that. And when you make alterations, that's what you're hoping for, is that things look like they should do. Thank you for joining me on this little project. I hope that you have gained some insight on how to either let in or let out a waistband. Just make sure that you can take the extra fabric from somewhere. If you were taking a waistband in and you needed to, you could put little pleats in, or actually put a little bit more fabric into the side seams. Usually with men's trousers there's a centre seam at the back, so you just sew all the way up and put that extra fabric into the seam. Women's clothes, it's a little bit more complicated, so the waistband and the skirt or the trousers are sometimes put in differently. So you just got to work out how they were taken apart, and that's how you put them back together. If you'd like to hear more from me, please subscribe, hit the bell button, and give me a few thumbs up. Would be absolutely excellent, then I know how I'm doing. And in the meantime, see you later. Take care. Ciao.
Recording? Can you stop for a second?
Yeah, hold on. Okay, see you later. Oh, no, we're back up on that.